Let's you and I discuss the healing power of baseball. Hey, you, how's it going? How are you? Welcome to this, your Wednesday edition of the show. Yeah, Wednesday. Excellent job, my friend. You are already halfway through yet another week. This is no small accomplishment. You're doing awesome. Hang in there. You got this. You are a badass. And if you need something, if there's anything I can do for you to make your Wednesday better, hit me up. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. At ADSXE is where you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. At ADSXE. Put it in your phone now in case you need it later. So I got an email. You can do that too. I am here with you. I am here for you at gmail.com. Or like I said, you can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But I got an email from Kyle who said, AD, what will it be like for you now you're in St. Louis? What with you being such a big Mets fan and all? Well, here's the thing. I am unbelievably grateful to be in such a fanatical baseball town. And I lived for the last 3 years in Las Vegas, which was really, really cool. It's an amazing place. And if you've only ever been to Las Vegas and done what most people do there when they go there and visit, head out to the Strip and party it up, well, that's great. But living in that town is very, very different from what you might imagine if that's all you've ever seen. It's, well, a desert anytown USA. Unbelievably family friendly. When I lived in Las Vegas, I lived on the northwest side of town. If you're familiar with the area, I lived in the sort of Jones and Grand Teton area. It was pretty rural. There were fields, and there were farms, and there were ranches, and there was an orchard. And, well, it was very, very quiet. The only time I really ever saw my neighbors was when their kids were riding their bikes to school. Like I said, anytown USA. Almost like Mayberry out by the mountains. And there were mountain views. And it was beautiful and quiet and serene. Yet 15, 20 minutes away was where my radio station was located on Fremont Street. All the craziness you could hope to shake a stick at. So it was a really, really interesting and cool place to be in many, many ways. But there was no Major League Baseball team. This was a very strange phenomenon for me. In all my time living back home in America after having grown up in England, I'd never lived in a city that didn't have an MLB team or one really nearby. Oh, and when you're trying to watch games on the MLB app, man, I love that thing. I think they did a great job at making it really, really easy to be a baseball fan. But it was a strange thing where I'm obviously, to anybody that's known me for any amount of time, probably knows that I'm a massive New York Mets fan. If you cut me open, I would literally bleed orange and blue. But they're in the National League. So when they were playing other National League teams on the West Coast, when they were playing the San Diego Padres, when they were playing the Los Angeles Dodgers, when they were playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, when they were playing the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants, man, it was blacked out living in Las Vegas. So not only was there no baseball, it was really, really difficult to watch my team play baseball anywhere on the West Coast. It was, unsurprisingly, in the desert, a bit of a baseball drought. Obviously, one of the years I was there for, there wasn't a whole lot of baseball because of COVID, but yeah, it was strange. I didn't get it. I didn't like it. And they have the minor league team, the Aviators, and I always wanted to go to Aviators games, but the whole time I was there, I didn't get to. One season was, of course, completely canceled, and then I never made it. And you know what really surprised me about Las Vegas was that, well, it's a town built on entertainment, shows, games, things of that nature. And I thought, being in radio, I might be able to scrounge up a couple of tickets or discounted tickets from somewhere. Occasionally we get access to things, and something like a minor league baseball team seemed like it would be easy to get myself into. And even if I couldn't have scrounged up some tickets that were left over from a promotion or something like that, I was perfectly happy to be paying for them. Yet those Aviators games were sold out all of the time. So I never made it, and I really regret that because the ballpark there is a nice one. I moved there a little too late. I moved there the year after the Las Vegas 51 stopped being the AAA affiliate for the New York Mets. And I was told by the folks that dealt with the minor league organization there that had I been there a year early, I could have been out there interviewing Michael Conforto and Noah Syndergaard while they were rehabbing and things of that nature. Sadly, it was not to be. By the way, if you're a Mets fan, you understand the gravity of that. I was almost shaking when I was told that I missed out on that. Not because I was angry, it was disappointing, I suppose, but the fact that I was so close to being professionally involved with this team that has meant everything to me since I was a little boy was a big deal. But there was no Major League Baseball team in Las Vegas, and I didn't make it to any of the minor league games, and I truly regret that. But being in St. Louis, I'm really, really excited to be in such a fanatical baseball town. Tomorrow's opening day. And, well, here's the thing. There are many people in the city of St. Louis that are of the opinion that it should just be made a citywide holiday because absolutely no one is going to work. And if they are, workplace productivity will be almost nil. So why not just call it what it is and let the city take the day off so they can cheer on their beloved team? And I'm excited. I'm excited to be in a town that has a passion for baseball like that. I know a lot of people that are fans of other National League teams that hate the Cardinals. And here's the thing. My Mets are in the NL East. So the Cardinals, well, they have often brutalized the Mets, aren't a persistent thorn in their side the way other teams in the East can be. But I've always admired the Cardinals, admired them from a distance. They are crushers of hopes and dreams in September. They are always in contention. And, well, if they're not in contention, they're there to mess up your postseason. They are a team that really doesn't seem to know how to quit. And it's not just a flash in the pan. It's not just the last year or the last couple of years. I mean, they had that unbelievable run toward the end of last season. That was something. That was something to behold. I think anybody that didn't have a huge grudge against the Cardinals couldn't help but be swept up in that excitement because it was amazing. Goldschmidt and Arenado at the corners, 2 Gold Glovers, pulling off amazing, unthinkable things late in the season that way. It just really doesn't get much better. And, well, for me, the Cardinals have always had this thing that I admired, this thing that I wished my Mets had, this thing that I wish, that I think a lot of people wish their teams had. I think it comes from that era of Whitey Herzog, who instilled among his players that they were going to be the hard cards, as my hero Keith Hernandez still calls them. They were always going to be hard to beat. Singles, doubles, triples, aggressive base running, stealing bases, keeping the opposition on their toes, keeping them off balance at all times. Exciting, fast, aggressive baseball that really, really gave other teams an awful lot of trouble. Not just then, not just in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but through today. It's a culture of winning. It's a culture of never giving up. It's a culture of playing the game a certain way that doesn't have anything to do with one particular lineup or one particular iteration of the organization. It's a cultural thing, and it's a cultural thing that you, me, all of us, if we're not fans of the St. Louis Cardinals, we wished our team had. When my Mets were beating the World Series in 2015 by the Kansas City Royals, that's the kind of baseball they were playing. And it was a heartbreaker of a season, obviously, to get that far and not make it all the way. And if you're a Mets fan, there are all sorts of theories about Matt Harvey and how long he should or should not have been pitching for. But when it came down to it, well, in my mind, the Kansas City Royals were playing Whitey ball. They were playing that kind of baseball instilled in the Cardinals by Whitey Herzog. They took a page or three out of his playbook and did that thing where they were fast and aggressive, and they didn't just rely on the long ball. They kept my beloved Mets off balance long enough to walk away that season with all of the marbles. And it was heartbreaking, but you had to hand it to them. There was a reason they won. And I think that's what the Cardinals have all of the time. Like I said, Keith Hernandez of the New York Mets and the Cardinals before that is a huge hero of mine. And if you're any kind of a baseball fan, and by the way, if you're not a baseball fan, well, if you're not a baseball fan, you're probably not still listening at this point. But Keith Hernandez wrote a book, I'm Keith Hernandez. And if you're a Seinfeld fan the way I am and saw his guest starring role in Seinfeld and watched it again many, many times, you know that line. Who does this guy think he is? I'm Keith Hernandez. And he wrote the book, I'm Keith Hernandez. And in it, he talked a lot about coming up through the Cardinals minor league system. He talked a lot about what it was like to play for them and the culture of winning and the culture and attitude of being that team full of, well, I mean, they weren't afraid of the long ball, but he was a line drive hitter. This was a guy that was going to hit a double and stretch it out into a triple. This was a guy that was going to steal bases. This was a guy who played a fast, aggressive, unbelievably intelligent first base. One of the all-time greats. How that guy is not in the Hall of Fame completely escapes me. And as far as I'm concerned, Keith Hernandez should be in the Hall of Fame, not just as a ball player, as a broadcaster. He is one of the all-time greats. If you're not a Mets fan, chances are you haven't had a chance to catch him doing his thing as part of the Mets booth, which, well, I'm biased, obviously. I think is the best booth in baseball. They are fantastic. Gary, Keith, and Ron are like no one else in the business. The Mets have spent a good portion of their career since I've been a kid sucking. And it's when the Mets suck, when they're getting blown out, that those guys truly come alive. They can talk about anything from music to architecture and make it compelling and interesting. Even if you don't know anything about the architecture that they're speaking about, they invite you in and you feel like you are being educated by a friend. That architecture, while you're watching your baseball team lose, and yet you're still transfixed and happy. It's an unbelievable, amazing, rare thing. And like I said, if you're not a Mets fan, chances are you haven't heard Keith Hernandez do his thing as a broadcaster. But like I said, he should be in the Hall of Fame, not just as a player, but also as a man behind a microphone. Straight up, a genius, I think. A guy who has unbelievable amounts of talent and has worked incredibly hard to hone that natural ability, both in baseball and in the booth. But his book, I'm Keith Hernandez, gave me even more admiration for the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you are, well, someone who's just getting to know me because I've been the morning guy on KC95 for a whopping 3 days now, you should know this. And this is a question I've been asked by a lot of KC listeners in the St. Louis area. I have nothing but admiration for the Cardinals. I am so happy to be in such an incredible baseball town. And I will have no problem cheering for them, except for when they're handing my Mets their asses. And of course, the struggles with the Mets have begun before the season even has. Our ace, a once-in-a-lifetime Koufaxian-style legend. An untouchable genius on the mound. watching this guy twirl a gem is like watching the Sistine Chapel be painted. The great Jacob deGrom out for who knows how long. But this idea that we were going to get to see Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer pitch back to back, that's a ways off. Everybody I know, including my new on-air partner, the great John Hewlett, who not only has been on KC95, the radio station I'm on, the longest running rock station in history for 45 years, he's also been the Cardinals PA announcer for the past 38 years. He knows his baseball. And as we were getting ready to work together, he was like, your Mets are going to be good. I was like, you think that, but wait. He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, wait, Mets are gonna Mets. And, well, the injuries have begun before we've even stepped onto the field. Note, I use the royal we. It's already, it already sucks. There I said it. I love the Mets. I love Jacob deGrom. They will always, always have my heart. And there's a certain comfort in watching things go wrong for them because kind of sort of used to it. And I know so many people will tell me that's a loser mentality and I'm willing it to happen. I'm not, but I'm used to it. I understand it. I get it. And here's the thing. I love the Mets. I love them when they win. I love them when they lose. I love the Mets. And no amount of injury, no amount of disappointment, no amount of any of that is going to change it in any way, shape, or form. That's in my DNA. That doesn't wash out. And I'm just very happy to be in a baseball town. My father, who passed away a little while ago, was not coherent for big chunks of the end of his life. Sometimes he didn't know who I was. Sometimes he didn't know where he was. Sometimes he would tell me about his son who was on the radio and how he was proud of him, which is a interesting mix of emotions to be hit with. On the one hand, it's heartbreaking. On the other hand, you get to hear your father talk about you as if you were talking to someone else, which in his mind, he was. But some of the more lucid and coherent moments I had with my dad, talking about baseball, talking about the St. Louis Cardinals, because as it turns out, Dad was a very big admirer of Yadier Molina. And, well, it's easy to understand why. Probably the greatest catcher in baseball at the moment. Heading into his final season. So, to have that baseball connection, which started when I was just a little boy with my father, started while we were watching the 1986 World Series. Living in England, I was allowed to stay up late to watch baseball with my dad because he got the notion that this was going to be something special, and it was. Even though he was a Yankees fan, well, he let his kid stay up and watch what turned out to be, at the time, probably the single greatest World Series in history. And just like that, I was a Mets fan for life. And toward the end of his life, like I said, my dad and I talked about baseball. A lot of the time, things were difficult with him. He was agitated. He was upset. He was sometimes confused, and when he wasn't confused, he wasn't very happy because he understood what was going on with him. And it wasn't a fun place to be. But some of the last great moments of true joy I had with my father was rewatching that 1986 World Series together, the way we did when I was a little boy. And that meant everything to me. It meant everything that I had it when I was a kid, and everything that I had at one last time as a grown-up. I suppose really watching the 1986 World Series was the last thing my father and I really did together. Most of the time I was looking after him. Most of the time I was, you and I have talked about this a bit in the past, but the level of care he received while he was in Kosovo, in the Balkans, where he'd lived for the last 15 years, was very high. The doctors were accomplished people. The doctors were experts in their field. His cardiologist in particular trained in Houston, was at the very top of his game. But there weren't a whole lot of nurses. Medical staff was on shorthand. So most of the time I was there, I was looking after my father. I was playing, best I could, the role of a nurse that wasn't there to be with him. Most of my final days with him were spent like that. But I suppose the last thing I really did with my father was watch baseball. I suppose one of the last things we really talked about was baseball. And how he thought Yadier Molina of the St. Louis Cardinals was the best catcher going. So to answer your question, Kyle, no, it's not weird for me to be in St. Louis as a huge Mets fan. In a weird way, I feel like it was a gift from somewhere else. I feel like it was a gift from my father that we could share that thing that brought us so close together when I was a boy one last time. And during his final season, I'm going to get to watch a man who my dad said was the very best at what he did a couple more times, up close and personal. I bleed orange and blue, but I'll be cheering all the way. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spend together, it's the best part of my day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. Play ball. Later.